Tonight, I went to the Muslim neighborhoods of Cologne, Germany, and asked who was behind the mass sexual assaults in that city on New Year's Eve. You'll be fascinated by the answers. It's March 2nd, and you're watching The Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
New Year's Eve in Cologne, Germany is a spectacular affair. It's a city of many bridges and a massive, gorgeous Gothic cathedral. And people stand along the bridges and the river and watch as the whole place lights up with fireworks. Except this year, hundreds of Muslim migrants from North Africa came to the city's central plaza between the main train station and the cathedral, and they had a mini riot. It started with Muslim men taking fireworks and shooting them at the cathedral like missiles. Seriously, it's a gorgeous church. It survived 2 world wars, the plague, empires rising and falling, and here are Muslim migrants shooting fireworks at the cathedral. But that was just the warm-up. They shot into the crowd too, and then as the night wore on, things turned darker. Packs of young Muslim men swarmed German women and hit them and groped them and stole their purses and sexually assaulted them and even raped some of them. It went on for hours. At least 500 or 600 Muslim men and more than 1,000 German women filed victims reports with police. But the whole thing was covered up for 4 days. Despite the all-night riot, the police department put out a press release the next morning claiming the evening was uneventful and, quote, relaxed. Not one German media outlet reported on the news, though all of them were surely aware of it. It was only when cell phone videos and personal testimonies on social media became too numerous and too loud to ignore did the story break, and only over the objection of the media and the police chief and the politicians. Just think about that censorship for a minute. Well, we went to Cologne, and we interviewed a doorman who was working in a hotel right across from the main riot all night, fighting back against the Muslim rioters, including a pack of 4 would-be rapists who were cornering women right outside his hotel.
And I told him, just go away, and he just don't listen to me. And he told me, this is our wife.
Our wife, did you say?
Our wife, yes.
These 4 men were calling these 2 German girls.
The leader of them.
Was calling these German women his wife.
Yes, this is our wife. You know, in this
our
way.
wife.
That's
crazy.
Yeah, and I said, and I just asked the girls, what happened? You got some stress with your boyfriend? No, we don't know them.
We'll have the whole interview with that doorman on another episode soon. But what about the Muslim men in Cologne? 2 months have passed. What was once a shameful secret that police and the press and politicians tried to keep has exploded into a shocking international news story. The whole world is talking about it, and it marked, I think, a turning point in Europe where ordinary Europeans realized that there was a very real loss of freedom and security from mass Muslim migration. And it's not just the risk of catastrophic terrorism, but that's the very real and relentless erosion of women's rights and public safety. I think it's a turning point. So we went to Cologne. We talked to people downtown like Ivan the doorman, but we went outside the city center to the east side of the Rhine, to the neighborhood of Kupstrasse. It's right in the city, but like Rosengard in the city of Malmö, Sweden, Kupstrasse is a street in an all-Muslim neighborhood. It's an older neighborhood, unlike so many of the migrants in Malmö. Many of the Muslims we met in Cologne had migrated years, even decades earlier. Many were Turks who had been brought into Germany as cheap migrant laborers to work in German factories. I'm sure it saved German industrialists a few percentage points in labor costs, but the social costs, well, that's what economists would call a negative externality. Let someone else pay for that. Now, we parked on Kupstrasse across from a Christian cemetery that looked centuries old. It was surrounded by high fences. It looked abandoned. Who knows? Maybe someone still visited it from time to time, but it was a Christian cemetery surrounded by an all-Muslim neighborhood, vibrating with young people. It was the perfect metaphor for demographically dying Germany being deluged by young, fertile Muslim migrants. I saw no vandalism of the Christian cemetery. It's not like the Muslims there had an overt hatred for the infidels they were expressing. Not at all. The opposite. I don't think most of them cared. Time and demography are on their side. No need to conquer a church if it's empty. Just buy it and turn it into a mosque. There were so many little street mosques in the neighborhood, almost one on every block. You could go through a doorway and into an inner courtyard and a private place where anyone could see anyone else coming and going. Little mosques where everyone knows everyone, so no chance for someone to sneak in like a reporter or a police informant. The moment we walked in, every eye around was on us. As I showed you yesterday, that can be very dangerous. Last week in Sweden, the Australian version of 60 Minutes was doing just what we were doing, and they were brutally attacked, hit, had things thrown at them, they were driven over. I don't know if they were doing something particularly provocative or if they just encountered someone really aggressive or what. Same thing with Jude Law at a migrant camp in France. His handlers were physically assaulted. Now, we had a security guard with us, and we were very gentle. If people didn't want to talk to me, I didn't press them. And in fact, no religious Muslims anywhere in Europe agreed to speak with us. They rushed right past us, brushing us away if we asked them questions. I was really the most interested in young people, the latest migrants, the most aggressive, not only ideologically, but in terms of their personal vigor. But I started off by talking to the first man I could find because, as usual, the women we met just didn't want to talk to us. So we spoke to this man, a guest worker, a Gastarbeiter, who's been in Germany since 1972, 44 years now. He came to work for Ford, he said. He's retired now. 44 years he's been in Germany, but his German was so weak, he and our German interpreter had problems understanding each other because he lives in a Muslim enclave and speaks Turkish every day. Why bother learning anything more than what you need to get by at the factory? Is he a German? Sure, but he's really a Turk. 44 years in Germany has assimilated him a bit. I asked him about gay rights and women's rights. He said gays are not normal, but he wouldn't go so far as to apply Sharia law to them.
Ja, Kopftuch ist normal, aber die homosexuell ist, ich denke, das ist nicht normal. Die Mann ist Mann, Frau ist Frau. Ich bin Türke, ja. Türkei auch, genau wie hier.
Ja.
Demokratie, keine Scharia.
Ja.
Aber wenn zum Beispiel hier die christliche Feiertag hier ist frei, ja. Die Türkei muslimische Feiertag ist frei, nur die andere alle gleiche.
I asked him who did the New Year's Eve sexual assaults, and unlike other Muslim men we would soon meet, he didn't try to pretend they weren't Muslims. They were North Africans, he said, Arab Muslims, not Turkish Muslims in Germany like him.
Wie heißt das? Das ist nicht normal, die unverschenkt. Das ist unverschickt, ja. Das ist nicht normal.
Who did that?
Television gehört und so.
Ja.
Television hat, Tagesschau hat, ich habe gehört, dann von die südafrikanische,
Ja.
so gesagt. Aber
Nicht,
ich habe
nicht
gesehen,
Turkish.
Nee.
North Africa.
Nein.
He wasn't a liberal by Western standards, but he is a liberal by Muslim standards, I think. 44 years in Germany, other than his hat and his beard, he's dressed fairly German. He's hanging out at a mosque, but he's not a firebrand. He still hasn't mastered the German language. His kids probably do. That's your best case scenario for European integration right there. A man who came to work, not for welfare. A man who sort of learned the language, who goes to mosque every day, but isn't looking to convert the world. That is your best case scenario after 44 years. Now, it started to rain, so we walked under a little overpass. I talked to another Turk, this one, 45 years in Germany. I asked him if it's easy to be a Muslim in Germany, and he said, yes, it was. Of course it is. He actually called Germany his homeland. I thought that was promising.
Es ist Deutsch ganz gut eine das Stadt, eine oder was Heimat. Ich bin das ganz alles Deutsche, ich liebe das. Keine Probleme. Ich denke, das ist meine Heimat. So, ja.
I asked him how many refugees from this current wave Germany can absorb. Is it unlimited? He said he had no idea. It wasn't his problem, it was Germany's problem.
Das ist nicht mein Problem. Ich weiß nicht, das ist für Deutschland, was das, wie heißt das, das Deweisen. Das ist für Herkommen, das ist wie Deutschland-Problem. Das ist das Problem. Das nicht meine Probleme, das. Ne? Und das Deutschland wissen, und Deutschland, ich glaube, Deutschland ist gute Stadt, ist gute Menschen. Dafür Menschen helfen das, immer helfen. Ja, immer helfen das.
Again, he's an old Turk. His German was rough, but what does he care about Germany's problems? He's done working. He's on a pension. Let the Germans figure this one out. He's not worried about Germany's culture being lost. He never really adopted the German culture himself. Well, I didn't need to talk to 65-year-old Turkish guest workers anymore. I wanted to talk to new migrants, young men. So I went to this bar, or at least outside it. I didn't want to go inside in a dark, crowded room. I'd stay outside, thank you. There was a picture of a cocktail glass on the window of the bar. I don't know if they actually had liquor inside, so I don't know if it was Sharia compliant. But these two Muslim men were enjoying the West a little bit. Here, listen, these are Muslims from Bulgaria who recently came to Germany to find work. One of them found work at IKEA. The other, no work yet, but enough money to go to the bar.
Where do you work? Where?
Wagenschieben.
Wagenschieben?
Ja, in Ikea.
Ikea?
Ja.
Ich bin momentan arbeitslos.
Now, I asked them about the New Year's Eve sexual assaults. 500-600 Muslim men, press reports say 1,000. Now, these men say they weren't there, but they surely heard about it, if not from friends directly, at least from the news. Well, who do they think did these sexual assaults? Well, that touched a sore spot with them.
Ich glaube, sie haben keinen zu tun mit dem so muslimische Religion sowas. Nein, kein zu tun. Das war kein.
Who were they?
Sie wohnen vielleicht islamischen so Stadt, aber sie haben keine zu tun. Keine Ahnung mit dem Religion, keine Ahnung. Absolut gar nichts, weil sie glauben nichts. Glauben Sie mir, ich sage das 100%, ein Gläubiger mag sowas nicht.
So there you have that logic. Again, Muslims would never do this, so Muslims didn't do it. And if Muslims did do it, well then by definition they weren't Muslim. You get it? Now I sort of like these guys. They look modern. The guy on the right even looks sort of cool with that little soul patch on his chin. They were obviously cool enough with Western vices. I mean, they just came out of a bar. I presume there was alcohol in there. I don't know. They were smiling. But when we asked them if women should wear veils, hijabs, niqabs, well, they were pretty insistent. Absolutely all Muslim women, in Germany must, said the guy on the left. They must, or you must divorce them. And these guys came from Bulgaria. They're not even coming from Syria or some other radical place. And look at how modern they look. But no, they must wear veils. Take a look.
Ja, Mann, sie müssen, Frau, sie muss machen das. Mann, sie nicht Muslim, sie kann nicht machen.
I asked them if they thought Sharia law should govern Muslim women in Germany or if German law should. They couldn't say. Or maybe they just wouldn't say to me.
Also in Deutschland kann man das jetzt momentan richtig sagen, aber ich kann das nicht zu sagen. Also ich kann das nicht erklären. Ja.
Oh well, there was one thing they were sure of. They loved Angela Merkel.
Die war gut.
Why? Warum?
Ja, warum sie helfen Ausländer und so? Ja.
Ich denke, sie ist sehr gut, weil ich weiß nicht, für mich ist gut.
Some men on the street just didn't want to talk. Maybe it was a language barrier. Maybe they were shy. Maybe they were worried we were cops. But it comes back to that thing I noticed everywhere. These Muslim migrant men, the young ones especially, they just hang out. They loiter. I mean, they're not in school or at work. This was in the early afternoon, and they were hanging out in bars or coffee shops or that thing of just hanging out on the street. I mean, I get being a teenager, going cruising with your friends, looking for trouble, maybe looking for girls, whatever. But these were, teens or people in their 20s. It wasn't nighttime. They weren't blowing off steam after a hard day's work. This was what they did all day. They just lingered because Angela Merkel is covering their bills, their housing bills, their health care, their food, their spending money. That's why they're in Germany. They're not like the Turks who came 45 years ago, coming to work the factories, after and actually do the hard work. Guest arbiters. These aren't guest arbiters. That's German for guest workers. No, they're migrants lounging around. After the break, I'm going to show you an interesting conversation I had with a Turkish-German man who had been there for a generation. Stay with us, and I'll show you that. Keep going on this.
Want to have dinner with Faith Goldie? Grab a drink with Brian Lilly. Talk politics with Ezra. You can do it all on the Rebel Cruise. This November, join us for great debates, gourmet meals, and gorgeous scenery as we sail from Fort Lauderdale around beautiful Caribbean islands. It's an intimate week where you can really get to know your favorite Rebel personalities and meet other Rebel lovers too. Space is limited, so visit therebelcruise.ca to sign up now.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Welcome back. So I met this fellow, a Turkish German, who was born in Germany. He looked like he was in his 30s. You could tell he was more integrated. He said he went to university. He was hopeful about the future. He reminded me that Turkey itself had been a place of secular reform and integration for decades, until recently. I thought he was thoughtful and hopeful, but I also know that he is an anomaly. He knows German. He works. He believes in secularism. For him, and the women in his family too. He's not like the three-quarters male, overwhelmingly male, illiterate migrants streaming by the millions into Europe now. Here, listen to a few of his thoughts. I liked him. I liked him very much because I wished all the migrants were like him. Not just modern in appearance, but modern in views and values. This guy said people get more liberal over time. True in his family, but I don't think that's true in general with Islam in Europe. I think it's getting more radical. Here, listen to him.
As Turkish people spend more and more time here, do they become more religious or less religious?
Less religious, I would say. Problem here is that the Western culture and the Eastern culture, or the Islamic culture, is very far away. It's very opposite in most things. But you can find the middle of it. Turkey was, till the last 10 years, the better, the
secular,
the middle between the Western and the Eastern world. Yes, it was more free and less religious than the other countries.
As I walked down the street, I met these two men. I started speaking with them half in English, half in my broken German, half through my interpreter, and very soon I realized that these men were not Muslim. They asked to move away from the other men, to move away from their friends, to continue our conversation. They said they weren't Muslim, they said they were Yazidi. Ethnically, they're Kurds, but it's a whole other religion. It's an obscure, ancient religion, barely 1 million followers in the world. They're the ones the Islamic State murders en masse. They're the favorite rape slaves for the Islamic State. Here, listen to how these two men slowly opened up to me about who they were and about the fear these men have, fear of Muslims.
Gibt Kurdisch Yazidi. Alle Kurdisch Yazidi.
You're Yazidi.
Yes. Kommen Sie so ein bisschen in eine Ecke, weil es
Sure.
Wir können nicht direkt sagen, wir sind Yazidi, ist ganz schlimm, wenn sagen wir sind Yazidi. Wenn eine Islamische hört, sagen wir sind Yazidi, die sagen, sie sind Kafir. Wir sind ganz, ganz schlimm. Deswegen, es gibt hier auch viele Muslime, ich kann nicht so direkt reden.
If someone asks you who you are, do you say you're Muslim or do you say you're Yazidi?
Yazidi, I'm Yazidi, I say Yazidi.
Wenn ein Moslem dich fragt, ob du ein Moslem bist oder Yazidi, sagt er dann...
Auf jeden Fall, ich bin Yazidi
Und nicht nur Yazidi, Christen auch. Wir sind gleich wie Christen. Deswegen, wir sind nach Deutschland gekommen, wegen Freiheit und in Irak, wir haben viele Probleme. Das habe ich jetzt in Irak gekauft.
What does that say?
Das steht lalisch auf meinem Blut, auf Yazidisch. Aber in Irak, ich habe gekauft, aber ganze Zeit auf meiner Tasche. Ich kann nicht so hier sind. Aber jetzt in Deutschland, ich kann rausstehen, ist kein Problem. Wenn ein Islam kommt, wenn macht er Probleme mit mir, dann kann ich direkt Polizei anrufen und dann ist kein Problem.
What does it say?
Das ist lalisch. Beispiel Islamisch hat Mekka in Saudi-Arabien. Wir sind Yazidi, gibt in Kurdistan lalisch profitiert. So.
You want Mosul to be free? Would you go back afterwards?
Ja, wenn das Scheiß, also nicht mehr Scheiß, aber klar, ich will wieder mein Land gehen. Also wenn das besser wird, auf jeden Fall gehe ich wieder zurück.
Would you go back? Germany is so nice. Germany is so free, but you want to go home.
Ja klar, also Germany ist ein schönes Land, also ich will, das ist meine zweite Heimat. Aber da fehlt mir was, also will ich gerne so mein Land leben.
Should NATO, should Germany and America and Canada, should they fight against the Islamic State and free Mosul?
Das hilft nicht. Seit 2003, also bis jetzt haben die nichts, also uns nicht geholfen, also schlimmer geworden. Eigentlich ja, das Saddam war Diktator, aber jetzt haben die nichts, also uns überhaupt nicht geholfen.
Should Kurdistan be a country?
Yes, Kurdistan is my country.
How do the Turks in this do the Turkish people in this neighborhood treat Kurds well?
Die Türken, die hier so wohnen, behandeln die Kurden...
Also mir persönlich nicht, aber ich weiß nicht, ob die anderen... Also wir nicht. Für uns ist das kein Problem. Also.
Are you worried that other people pretending to be Flüchtlinge are actually ISIS? Are you afraid of that?
Die meinen?
Habt ihr Angst davor, dass es viele Leute hier hinkommen, die sich als normale Moslems ausgeben, aber eigentlich hier vielleicht Anschläge oder sowas machen?
Ja klar, also seit die Flüchtlinge hier reingekommen, also sind ein bisschen schlimmer geworden, weil die kapieren nichts.
What should the West do? We want to help Yazidis. We want to help Kurds. We want to help Christians. And we want to help Muslims who are liberal. How do we help liberal Muslims, Yazidis, Kurds, but not bring in terrorists, not bring in Sharia law? How do we do that?
Ja, für mich ist nur Yazidi und Christen nach Deutschland kommen und Deutschland hat viel uns geholfen. Bis jetzt, das ist sehr, sehr gut und hat uns sehr geholfen. Weil wir sind wegen Islamischer von Irak ist rausgeschmissen. Wenn Islamier kommen nach Deutschland auch, dann besser von Irak nicht gekommen. Da geblieben ist besser.
I didn't understand until later what that one man's necklace was, what he was trying to say. That was the word for the Yazidi holy city, the holy place. He was saying it was like Mecca is to Muslims, like Jerusalem is to Jews. He said he was scared to even show that word in public, lest people threaten him, certainly back where he came from. I knew a little bit about Yazidis, but later in our trip to Europe, we would learn a lot more. Now, let me show you one last video. A young guy, hipster. I like the hair, I like the style. He said Germany should take more migrants, of course. Take a listen.
Also so viele sind das nicht. Türkei hat mehr genommen.
Türkei hat mehr.
Ja, Türkei hat mehr auf jeden Fall.
I asked him if he was worried about some of the new migrants, if they were Western-oriented like him, or if they were too religiously fundamentalist. Now, the conversation soon turned to the events of New Year's Eve. Were those Muslims? Were those migrants? The police said it was. The doorman we interviewed at the riot scene said it was. What does this young Muslim man think? Well, as he spoke, his body language changed. He looked defensive. He started backing away from me. I had to follow him a little bit to keep my microphone near him. Here, listen to how our conversation ended.
Ich will keine beschuldigen, keine Ahnung.
Ja. Und waren das eher Christen oder Juden oder was?
Das weiß ich nicht. Ich will keine beschuldigen.
Are you sensitive to this? Are you embarrassed? Why don't you want to talk about it?
Ist das nicht unangenehm? Ich will einfach nicht darüber reden, weil...
Ja.
Natürlich sind das Moslem, also ich will nicht sagen, das sind Christen, also auch Moslem, Christen, das sind alle gleich, wir sind alle Menschen. Moslem, Jude, Christ, egal wer das ist, wer das gemacht hat, das ist kein Mensch, also das ist was nicht Menschliches.
Ja.
Aber was die gemacht haben, ist scheiße, aber ich kann nichts dafür.
Okay, ja, nein,
Ja.
kein Problem.
Dankeschön. Thank you very much. Auf Wiedersehen. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, he was agitated. It could have been Jews, it could have been Christians, could have been anyone, not Muslims. Stop asking. Well, so I did. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to know what Muslim Germans thought about the massive sexual assaults on New Year's Eve. And I think I know. They just don't want to talk about them, just like the police and the press and the politicians don't want to talk about them either. Just like feminists don't want to talk about how migrants want to put women back into veils, just like gay rights activists don't want to talk about how Muslims almost universally say gays are abominable. Everywhere I went in Europe, that was a common refrain. Just like seculars don't want to talk about creeping Sharia law. The West is cowardly, even about the values it claims to believe in. Look, I didn't even go anywhere exotic. I didn't go anywhere too fresh. This was an old Turkish neighborhood. I didn't go to the newly arrived migrants, fresh from ISIS Central. I didn't go to the hot mosques. This was as liberal as Europe gets when it comes to Islam. What do you think of the streets of Cologne? Do you think that city, that country, has come to terms with what happened on New Year's Eve? I don't. How long do you think it'll be? How many more unvetted, culturally inappropriate migrants will Canada take before we have some of these same issues in our city streets? That's our show for today. Come back tomorrow. We'll have a lot more from our trip to Europe. We've got days more footage you won't find anywhere else. Not because it was dangerous on the street. I had a bodyguard, but I felt safe enough. It wasn't physically dangerous, but the questions and the answers, well, they're dangerous to the mainstream media narrative, aren't they? I'm Ezra Levant. From all of us here, keep fighting for freedom while you still can.